Welcome, fellow Kiwanians. How's everybody doing today? Glad to see you, all the folks in the room today. I'm gonna tell on myself. It's so hot. I decided to forgo the dress code, so I apologize. But as long as I don't get in trouble with work, then we're good, right? So, got some announcements today. Mac McCorkle is dealing with AFib issue, and we'll be going to VCU next week for ablation surgery. And John has a card he's going to pass around. I don't know if y'all saw the news this weekend, but I want to congratulate Root Cutler and John Bradshaw for their recognition of Colonial William Preston Memorial dedication in Botetourt County over the weekend. That was a great event. And also, Ben Spiker and John Montgomery represented our club at Kiwanis International over last weekend as well. So give those guys a hand. Just wanted to say, just saw this morning on Facebook, but our own Tom Miller is the 4th ever recipient of the Roanoke Bar Association Distinguished Service Award. So wanted to announce that for Tom Miller as well. Our invocation today is going to be led by Gary Durrick.
Let us pray. Almighty God, whose gracious light breaks through our darkness like the sun with healing in its beams, come and dwell in our hearts that our homes may be godly, our labors honest, our education noteworthy, our pleasures innocent and healthful. Make this nation a pattern of righteous power and ordered liberty. Let this nation be blessed of you for a blessing to all peoples, to the honor of your great name. Now, we ask that you bless the food we're about to receive and our lives to your service. Amen. I will maintain the podium since I'm also the song leader today. So we haven't sung My Country 'Tis of Thee for a while. Seems like pre-COVID days. So we're going to sing that today. And Judy, can you give me a little introduction to that? No. Not My Country 'Tis of Thee. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountain side, let freedom ring. If we sing that again, it'll be a different tune.
Thank you, Gary. Our Pledge of Allegiance today is our own Preston Tyler.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic from which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Preston. One of our new members, Diane DeHaven, has greeted our guest today.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've actually been a member for a lot of years, took a hiatus, and then Don Wilson brought me back. So here I am. Introducing our guest, we have Mike Adams here, and his sponsor is Guy Bird. If we could ask you to stand, and we'll let everybody stand until we're done, please. And then we have Milton Hardy, and his Kiwanis host is Stephanie Moon Reynolds. Maybe. Nope, nope, okay. And then Luke Pretty is here as a guest, and his sponsors are Ken Briggs and John Edwards. So I would like to invite everybody to come back and join us again, and would love to have you become a member. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So everything's going to be more expensive. I'm going to meet with Deb at Walmart so she can pull all the items for us, the backpacks included. And next week, I'll have a sheet out on the table. We cannot start too early because we'll probably need over $4,000 this year. I will let you know soon. So open up your hearts to these little kindergarten and first graders, and I thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. So coming all the way from Scotland, I think we have Mike O'Brock to do an update on the environmental committee.
Well, thank you, President Clark. I want to first thank you all for arranging for such a high quality Zoom meeting. I've been able to hear almost every word. Thank you. Second, I'll mention that on Monday, we are having our monthly Environment Committee meeting, and it's kind of a special meeting. So if you're thinking about coming as a guest, this would be the one to do it. Each of our meetings, we have an environment mini lesson, and this mini lesson is about an entrepreneur who's cleaning up trash on Mount Everest. It's one of the most compelling stories I think we've had. Please join us this Monday.
Thank you, Mike.
Good afternoon. I'm Don Witt, and I have two announcements. One, I'd like to recognize those who volunteered for the interpretive sign installation last Friday. We were scheduled to install 5 signs, but one was dropped for other reasons. And the morning crew was so efficient that they installed them all, and we did not need the afternoon crew. But I still appreciate their volunteering. Please stand and be recognized and thanked. John Hewitt, Mike Loveman, Jim Randalls, Andy Stone, Alex Bowman, Shion Baker, and a visitor from last week, Mike Adams. Shion, I want to do a special shout out for Shion because she took time off from work, arrived at the site, and there was no work to be done because she was on the afternoon crew, but appreciate her involvement. Thank you, one and all.
She's on Zoom too.
Oh,
so-
okay,
so
good.
it's all good.
Next announcements. I have another volunteer moment, an opportunity for you all. As you know, in May, we started a pollinator garden, and as a first step, it was a part of the first step that we, for our nature park. The plantings look great, but we need your help to keep them looking great. That is where you come in. We are looking for volunteers to water and spread deer repellent during the 1 week this summer. Now, there are sheets out on the tables for you. All the equipment is at the site, so you don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is show up, water up and deer up, if you will, deer off up. Please sign the sheets at the table. For those online, send me an email at drwitt@cox.net. We have slots available after the week of July 11th, every week from then on. So thank you, and thank you for volunteering. Bye.
All right, we're gonna have a KPAD wrap-up meeting, and I'm gonna let Ben tell us about that.
Excuse me, I just ate. KPAD wrap-up meeting tomorrow evening, beginning at 5:30 at ServPro in the upstairs office. That's building number building number 2, the one where we met before. The purpose of this, just do a little bit of debrief to talk about what we did that worked very well and to begin the process of planning for next year's KPAD. It's not too soon to start thinking about how next year is going to work out. We had a very successful KPAD, thanks to each and every one of you, and we're looking forward to even a better one next year. Thank you. Tomorrow evening at ServPro for the KPAD committee meeting, just to do a debrief. It's at 5:30, building 2, ServPro. It's the Salem Industrial Park.
Yep, on Southside Drive.
On Southside Drive, Salem Industrial Park on Southside Drive. If you have any questions, give me a call or shoot me a line. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Lois isn't here today, but we have a membership meeting Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Lois is going to send out that Zoom link. So anybody wants to participate, we'd love to have you. And I've got an announcement that I'd like to get our bocce ball come back. It's been 2 years since we've done it. So I'd like to bring our bocce ball tournament back to the club. So again, our committee has kind of wandered off because of the 2 years. So if you're interested in being on the bocce ball committee, please reach out to me, because again, I'd love to set a time and try to have everybody meet together to talk about bocce for this coming up year. And I think we have plenty of time for brag bucks. Does we have any braggers today? Go ahead.
I'm John Montgomery, and we had a number of additions to our announcement list earlier. And one thing that I failed to convey to President Clark, the Get Well card that is going around, it's marked Bob Rutherford. John Ewart shared with me during the time that we were setting up for the meeting that Bob has been hospitalized with an infected kidney stone. And I know he's remarked to me before what it means to get a Get Well card, and the one I've selected for him is a little risque, and hopefully it'll ease some of his pain when he sees it from our club. That's the intent of that. I also had a couple of brag bucks myself. I wanted to brag on a couple of people affiliated with our club, both now and previously, that have had significant accomplishment. One is our own Wendy Mellentine. Where is Wendy? She's in the back of the room. Just this past weekend, she was honored with a ceremony where she was professed as a secular Franciscan. And some of our club members were there, including Mike McAvoy and his wife, Gail, Mike Loveman, who's on Zoom, and his wife Susan, and the widow of former member Bill Stack, Rosina Stack. It's nice to have our club support Wendy in the recognition of a honorable accomplishment that she worked on for 3 years during COVID. Not easy. Congratulations to you, Wendy. And speaking of people who have accomplished something in the field of theology, we would be remiss not to recognize Kara Modisette, who was a member of this club, and Judy's been with us a couple of times over the years. In the interim, Kara was our organist. In fact, when my daughter, I can trace it to my daughter being married. Kara was a member of this club and offered a 3-hour performance that you could bid on, and I used it for my daughter's engagement party. So Kara was at least a member during the 2000 aughts, and many of you know her, a very accomplished musician and writer. She is being ordained this coming Saturday as a deacon in the Episcopal Church, and she also has completed her seminary schooling and will soon be an ordained priest. So her ordination as a deacon is going to be available Saturday at 11, and I will send out the link. Is it YouTube? Is that where it is, Wendy? And I understand Wendy's is available on tape as well. Is that right? Maybe I can get that all together and send out an email for those of you that are interested. But I wanted to brag on Kara. She's been a help to our club a number of times over the years. And I asked Clark if I could wind up the brags. I didn't realize I was going to be the only brag today, but it seems like a good segue as I'm at the podium and we have plenty of time to proceed to our program. And I'm pleased that, Ken, would you like to brag? Apparently I'm not the only brag.
John, I'm sorry for
That's
not
right.
standing there. I wanted to brag on Guy Bird's guest, Mike Adams. Again, as many of you know, we sponsor an action club, a service club, and those members are made up of people who have sustained brain injuries. And we have found that brain injuries not only affect the individual, but also affect the families. And one of our members has been estranged from his family, had not seen his son or spoken to his son in over 8 years. And through the efforts primarily of Mike Adams and other folks in our action club, that father and that son were reunited on Monday at our action club meeting. Mike has put a lot into that. Mike, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Ken. I told Mike when I was speaking with him, Mike Adams, during the preliminary of our meeting, that Ken and I have been in the club about the same length of time, and we worked together on a number of things. And I also told Ken that I had some experience on going with the flow as things come up. And it'd be an excellent time to say the program for today is largely the responsibility of Ken Briggs. Ken does a lot of work, as anyone who's been in the club any length of time knows. And Ken, thank you for setting up our state legislative report. Our participants are here, and several of them have guests of their own that they'll be recognized when they're at the podium. But Ken, I want to thank you publicly for a lot of behind the scenes work, not just on the Action Club, not just on today's program, not just on the playground, not just on the bridge builders, not just on the key clubs. Could go on for quite a while. Ken's a true Kiwani, and I'm proud to call him a friend. Thank you, Ken. Pardon? Okay, Don, speaking, I could brag on you too, but my wallet is getting lighter all the time. I know Don well enough, he can call me on that. Consider $2 bragging for Ken. Many of you have been to Kiwanis meetings when we've invited our state legislators. It's become a regular program. In our 102 years, I can't imagine how many programs we've had of a political and legislative nature. We've had a number of forums. I see Rupert Cutler, who is on Zoom. Rupert, who was a predecessor of mine as president of this club, was an excellent moderator. And really, my role in today's program was prepared for our officials as time permits. Let me tell you that we understand protocol is for people to speak in terms of in terms of tenure in their respective positions. I should also add that Delegate Chris Head, who has been a frequent participant in this program, had an unexpected conflict arise and isn't able to be here. But in terms of elected positions, we'll first hear from Senator John Edwards, and then from Delegate Sam Rasool, and then from Delegate Joe McNamara. And I want to tell you that a few facts about each of them, because we've done this a number of times and many of you have been here previously. I tried to find some new nuggets, if you will, about each of them that you may not have heard, at least from my mouth. John Edwards, seated to my immediate left. I'm going to introduce all three of them and then have them follow in sequence. John Edwards is a 45-year Kiwanian, pretty remarkable in its own right. And his father, Richard Edwards, this is what you may not know, former mayor of Roanoke. As quite a young man, he was mayor of Roanoke, wasn't he, John? Maybe in his 30s. 35, John says, pretty outstanding. Was president of this very esteemed organization, the Kiwanis Club of Roanoke, in 1959. Here's something else you may not know about Senator Edwards. At UVA Law School, you were a writing instructor assistant to Professor Antonin Scalia, later the Supreme Court Justice. That's a pretty rare company. And you're completing your 7th consecutive term as a state senator, pretty remarkable achievement in its own right. He is a Democrat from District 21, representing Giles, or Roanoke City, part of Montgomery County, part of Roanoke County. Please welcome Senator John Edwards. Before you come up, I'm going to introduce the other two. Sam Rasool, who's brought his own Secret Service today. Sam, good to have you here. A 15-year Kiwanian. I just looked that up a little while ago. That's a pretty good streak, too. Thanks to Steve McGraw. Steve's a pretty good recruiter, no question about that. And I noticed on one of your websites I was looking at earlier that your organization membership includes a number of community activities which are partners of Kiwanis. I thought that's not entirely coincidence, but even if it is, it's a pretty nice parallel that you deliver Meals on Wheels, that you've been involved with Junior Achievement, Goodwill, all friends of our club. But the first one on the list I looked at was the Kiwanis Club of Roanoke. So that was nice to see. You may not know that Delegate Rasool has an MBA from Hawaii Pacific, and that he's on the adjunct faculty at American National University. Frank Longacre is a member of our club also. You're the recipient of Roanoke's Platinum Award, the government person who gets it. That's nice to have on your resume. And something else I didn't know, that 14 years ago, when you first ran for Congress, you were the youngest candidate in America. Pretty remarkable. Delegate Rasool is from District 11, representing Roanoke City. Please welcome Delegate Sam Rasool. And it's great to see this bipartisanship the way you're seated, by the way, working hand in hand. Joe McNamara is not yet a Kiwanian, with emphasis on yet. And yet he's certainly been a friend of our club in many ways, and appeared at this forum at least 3 times, I think, right? We appreciate that, Joe. And of course, many of us who have been in the valley know you had 15 years experience on Roanoke County supervisors. And Steve McGraw will tell you, after you got that under your belt, these other jobs are a piece of cake, right? I think from my perspective, at least, it's been almost 4 years that you've been a state delegate. You're known as a consensus builder, and you've had success as a bipartisan compromise is sort of something you take pride in. I'm not surprised that you're seated as you are. You hold degrees from UVA and Virginia Tech. That's some pretty good compromising right there. You know how to run a successful business, as evidenced by your ice cream organizations, and you are the only CPA in the General Assembly. That's a pretty important qualification. I'm sure a lot of people respect you just for that alone. Joe is Republican from the 8th District, which includes Craig, part of Montgomery, and the city of Salem. Please welcome Delegate Joe McNamara. Thank you, gentlemen. We would like to ask you to hold your remarks to about 7 to 8 minutes apiece. At the 7 minutes, I'm going to be seated here, and I'll gently tell you we're at the 7 mark, so you have a minute to wrap up. And as that time allows, we will have some questions afterwards. Senator Edwards?
Thank you, John, very much with that warm introduction. And I'm delighted to be here with my fellow Kiwanians. I've always enjoyed being a member of the Kiwanis Club in recent years because of the pandemic. Haven't been here very often, but I've always enjoyed being here. I'm glad to be here with my fellow delegates in the Roanoke Valley, Sam Rasul and Joe McNamara. We've always gotten along generally, for the most part, except on a few partisan things, but we can talk about that later. But we usually get along, especially with regard to local matters, because mostly in the General Assembly, it's the regional and the local issues that really are important. And the divisions are typically on regional or local lines as opposed to partisan lines. So keep that in mind. The paper loves to talk about the things we disagree on, which is fine, but there's more things we agree on than we disagree on. First of all, I want to tell you a few things we got for the local area. The Transportation Museum, I'm kind of proud of what we've done there. Last year, we tried to make a case to make the Transportation Museum into a state agency. In fact, back in the early 90s, Hunter Andrews, who was chairman of the Finance Committee then, recommended that the Roanoke Transportation Museum be an official state agency. And last year, the secretaries of Transportation and Education both agreed that it should be a state agency. So I put in the bill. I didn't quite get there, but we got $500,000 instead. So that's a first step, and I hope in the future we can make it a state agency. It is, as you know, the official Transportation Museum of Virginia, even though it's not a state agency. And it's been that way for some time now. If you haven't been to the museum recently, go. It's railroads, of course. We have air. We have automobiles. We have model trains. And it's a beautiful place to go, especially if you have kids or you have people from out of town. Be sure and go. They are now getting like 22,000 out-of-state citizens in Virginia and Roanoke to visit the Transportation Museum. That's with a budget of less than $1 million. So with $1.5 million, we think they can expand that dramatically. In fact, the study they did, they think they can bring in 950,000 out-of-state visitors if it becomes a state agency with $2 million. So we'll see what happens there, but I'm proud that we got it started. We're going to continue moving forward. So talk up the Transportation Museum. It's not only good for tourism purposes, but for children and for educational purposes. I remember years ago when I was first elected, for the first 4 or 5 years, I'd get $2.5 million for local agencies. The History Museum, the Art Museum, the Science Museum, the list goes on and on, the opera, the symphony, and all the rest. Then in the early 90s, early 2000s rather, the speaker, Bill Howe, said, nope, no more state agency money from the state. You can get non-state agency money instead. If you're a state agency, you can get the money, but you can't get the money if you're a non-state agency, which I thought made no sense at all, but that's been the case for a long time. And so we haven't gotten any money for our local agencies until very recently. We finally got it, started doing it last year a little bit. But I think we have very important agencies here that we can get money for. The second thing I want to talk about is got funding for the Blue Ridge PBS. I think $350,000 for the local Blue Ridge PBS, another $500,000 for the one in Appalachia, which works closely with the local PBS station as well. And we got $15.7 million for the Roanoke Biotechnology Lab project. It's the IBM machine down on Jefferson Street, the old IBM machine. We want to turn that into a biotech lab, working with the Research Institute. Is that on? Doesn't matter. And so that's a good, important project for the local valley to have money for the lab, the museum for startup companies for the Roanoke Research Institute. In addition, I want to talk a little bit about the Roanoke Higher Education Center. We recently opened up the central walkway. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's beautiful. The central walkway between the Roanoke Higher Education main building and the Claude Moore Education Complex, where Virginia Western has its Culinary Arts Center. We built a plaza, about $450,000 from the state. And the plaza has also granite slabs that tell the history of Gainsborough, the oldest part of Roanoke. And if you haven't seen it, by all means go. And there's an app you can do, a walkway app that you can listen to it or see it. You can actually run off what they're doing. They're showing the whole history of the Roanoke area. Gainsborough that started in 1835, and of course later Big Lick and Roanoke, and how the railroad came and how the Gainsborough community evolved. So I hope you have a chance to see that. The other thing is with regard to Amtrak. In 2011, we got money for a bus. In 2017, we got the money for Amtrak to start. And we thought we could get maybe 55,000 people in 2017 per year. We thought that would work. Turned out the first year was 125,000. The next year, 225,000, and it was exploding. In fact, Amtrak from Roanoke has given money to other parts of the state for Amtrak. It's making money for the rest of Amtrak. And so we're working now on getting it to Christiansburg. We think we can do it. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be 2026. But we also, this summer, we think we can get another train, a second train from Roanoke in the afternoon to go to Washington and back, just Washington and back, but at least be a second train to help people, because it starts at dark 6:30 in the morning or so. On the weekends, it's about 2 hours later. But we're making progress with regard to Amtrak, and I hope by 2026 at the latest, we can have Amtrak to Christiansburg. We did get $250,000 2 years ago in the budget, $250 million in the budget to improve the line between Roanoke and Christiansburg, about 28 and a half miles. It's going to cost that much to upgrade the track, and the money's there. And I've been pushing the Secretary of Transportation to move forward as quickly as possible, because the money's there, the plans are there. It's a matter of just getting it done. And I hope we can get that done as soon as we can. A couple of quick things. We got raises for teachers, got raises for school resource officers, state employees, local police, sheriffs, deputies, corrections officers, and $1.2 billion for school construction. That's a historic increase. We have $25 billion in needs for school construction all over the state. And the smaller localities can't afford to do it. So this will help them tremendously, I hope. And tax reduction, 1 minute. Okay, tax reduction. We increased the standard deduction. Thank the state for doing this. We almost doubled the standard deduction if you apply jointly. It'll go from $9,000 a year to $16,000 a year. So there is some tax relief there. In addition, we did increase the earned income tax credit, which helps lower income people. And the grocery tax, there's back when I first ran, and when I ran in 1999, I ran on a platform to get rid of the sales tax on food. We finally did that. Several years later, the 4.5% was reduced to 2.5%. Now they're 2.5% is the local tax. So we got that down to 1%, but the 1% is, I think, optional for each locality. So anyway, I'll help you with your groceries a little bit. So we've made a lot of progress in how $23 million for retail and alcohol. So with that being said, thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions later.
Thank you, Senator. Delegate Rasul, please welcome Delegate Sam Rasul.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm happy that I didn't have to cede some of my time to the Senate today, but it's a pleasure to be able to work with a great regional delegation that does work hard for the region on a bipartisan basis. It is true, Steve McGraw brought me here 15 years ago. It seems like, and that's when Don Wilson, who's not here, Don got me on my first Meals on Wheels route. So our route out in Vinton. So a lot of good keeps coming out of this club, and many things change, and this man stays the same. I am also here with my 3 children. They're out of school and mommy's at work, so they're coming to work with daddy right now. I told them there's food. And then my daughter came around and she's like, what is this? What is this what is this meeting right here? I don't understand it. I'm like, well, you know how you go to the Girl Scouts? It's like a weekly meeting, kind of like the Girl Scouts, except with cake at the end. And she's like, oh, okay, that's good. So it's great to be with you. So big line item, big things that we want to keep in mind for this budget. Number one, we have a $4 billion savings account. We've never had anything close to that. We've typically tried to keep close to $1 billion. During some downturns, it would be about half of that. But for the first time, we're going to have a record, I mean, by far, savings account. In addition to the $4 billion in savings, then we're going to have $4 billion in tax cuts and tax relief coming back to you in a number of different ways. $1 billion in direct checks that are coming right back to Virginians, a sharp increase in the standard deduction. We're cutting a big chunk of the grocery tax thanks to some of the great work by my friend and colleague, Joe McNamara, who was a great advocate. I was a big fan of, and some local governments weren't as excited about that. But for me, I think the grocery tax is one of the most regressive taxes that we have. And so I think that was a great place to start. So we have we'll have a robust income tax relief for our veterans. And we're one of the, I think one of the few states who didn't have this kind of more robust relief. And so there's a great program that'll be coming out that we're going to test out for the next several years. So we begin all of our conversations about the investments and the work that we're doing with just how well managed Virginia is, how fiscally sound this Commonwealth is, and that the future looks pretty well. And we're ready for any type of downturn. As we know, things are cyclical, and we'll have things that will come and go, and Virginia is going to be ready for it. Specifically to this region, we're pretty excited. In addition to some of the investments that Senator Edwards outlined, we have a state-of-the-art, what's called the Johnson & Johnson Labs project that is being funded right down the road. So if you know the Carilion building, that is an all-black building that is going to be procured through a great partnership with the city, the Verge, Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council, and Johnson & Johnson, all coming together to have a wet lab incubator space. So we're doing some great research at Fralin Biomedical. We have the ramp incubator space, but what you need is for certain companies that are just getting off the ground to incubate, they actually need laboratory space. And so this partnership with Johnson & Johnson will provide upwards of 30,000 square feet of this wet lab space, which is critical. The state will be putting forward about $15.7 million. The city of Roanoke, about $2 million. And so we're excited to be able to have this a great partnership that is going to say the research that we are doing at Fralin Biomedical is going to be excelled as we move forward. In addition to the raises that the senator mentioned, and I noticed when he talked about some of the raises for law enforcement, the back corner got lively. They're like, oh, yes, it's coming your way. We're going to be helping, and we pretty much hit everyone in public service. I think is going to be supported. We are excited that we're going to have a feasibility plan for Catawba Hospital. So many of you might know it's a campus, but it's several hundred acres actually over there. It's a state resource. We want to transform that resource specifically to try to bring some substance use disorder facilities there on that campus. We are working closely with the commissioner and the Secretary of Health. I was fortunate that Governor Youngkin and his team endorsed in our plan to analyze how we can transform this region to not just deal with mental health and substance use disorder, but to actually own it and to be known for it. So if you partner that with some of the great work that's happening at the Research Institute, that the work that is happening at Radford University, Carilion, and at Virginia Tech, we are in a good spot. And then the last couple things I'll mention, we've got about $150 million that's going into the Housing Trust Fund, a record amount that is going to be put into public housing. I will say that in addition to, there's certainly lots of other things to talk about, but the growth and development of this region will not work unless we are prospering together. And there's an innovation corridor, and we need these investments, and we need to make sure that the people who are going to come support and work in these places have affordable housing, have access to the resources that they need. And so we've got to make sure that while we're talking about all the bright spots, we're equitably thinking about bringing our schools along, tackling poverty and gun violence prevention. And so we look forward to making sure we're having a balanced conversation in all of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. Please welcome Delegate Joe McNamara.
So it hasn't been mentioned, but Delegate Rasul is now a member of the Appropriations Committee, which is the one that spends money. So anybody that needs money for anything, talk to Sam. I chair the taxation, the State Taxation Committee. So anyone that wants to change state tax law, come talk to me. But anyhow, I think what was said is entirely accurate. It's been a very good session for the Roanoke Valley. It's been a good session for Virginia. We do work very, very hard. I think Catawba is a heck of to pull off what was pulled off in Catawba with Catawba Hospital was a heck of an accomplishment. Senator Suderline had some, as did Senator Edwards, on some great accomplishments for the region. Anybody that's heard me speak for the last 30 months or so, I've said over and over again, we're under forecasting revenues, that the economy is not tanking for the Commonwealth of Virginia. So rather than changing things up, I may as well say that again. Yesterday, the 11 month numbers for the fiscal year we're in. So the fiscal year we're in ends at the end of June, so through 11 months, we're up 17.9% in the Commonwealth of Virginia over last year. So that's a big number. That number is up 14.2% over the month before. So we can have agreement on, or we sometimes have disagreement on what to do with the extra dollars. And that's why we we go to Richmond and we put out our views and we try to reach some sort of middle ground. But there's certainly no question that the revenue growth for the Commonwealth of Virginia is very, very large over the past 2 years. And it's likely to be so going forward. That in mind, I did sponsor a number of spending, taxing changes in the Commonwealth this year. Very, very happy. Doubling the standard deduction went through the House, ran into a stumbling block in the Senate, but I'm happy to say it is now part of our tax code in the conference report going forward on our budget. Grocery tax at 1.5% versus the full 2.5%, certainly a disappointment, but it's something we can go back and go after again next year. It's also, we are going to be back in Richmond Friday. I wouldn't be amazed to see that back on the table. So we'll see where that goes. But Sam is right. Even with some of these tax reductions, our savings account, our big piggy bank, is nearing 20% of our annual revenues. So we actually had to change a piece of code in our conference report because our revenue stabilization and reserves can only total up to 15% of our general fund. And we're now pushing 20%. So we had to change the law so we could save extra money. The other thing that happened that I think has me not at all concerned about what might happen when we announce a 0.75% jump this afternoon in the Fed's discount rate is the budget that's put together. The second year of the biennium is $3.7 billion lower than the first year of the biennium. So the budget was put together assuming a pretty significant drop off in revenues on that second year. I personally don't believe that's going to happen. 85% of the revenues in the Commonwealth of Virginia come from sales tax, which go up with inflation, comes from personal income. We have a labor issue, and we certainly, I think, even if the country does tip into a negative gross domestic product production environment, I still think you're going to have a very strong labor market. So the revenue sources that are going to come into the Commonwealth are going to stay strong. And I think we're going to be having this discussion again next year when we get to the General Assembly of what to do with the extra revenues. I will also say, and it's with great thanks, I guess, the committees that did try to work out the budgets for this coming year. We hear of, let me back up. We hear of governments occasionally. It's never good practice, but we hear of governments occasionally using one-time money to fund ongoing expenses. So you have a surplus that came in from selling a library of $2 million and you go and allocate it toward teacher raises. Well, the teacher raises may be okay. The teacher raise continues the next year and the year after that and the year after that. And what you've done is just created a problem. You've taken one-time money and you funded ongoing expenses. Bad plan. The Commonwealth of Virginia this year used ongoing money to fund one-time expenses. Did the complete opposite. So when Delegate Rasul talks about the $1 million in checks coming back to you, that actually is being funded out of the ongoing revenue stream, not the budget surplus from prior year. What did we do with the budget surplus from prior year? We put $750 million into the Virginia retirement system. Our retirement system is not bad to begin with. Retirement systems across the country are in less than perfect position. Places like Illinois are real bad, Maryland, California. Virginia's in pretty good shape. Even so, we put 750 and perhaps another 250 million. So very, very conservative budget. I think it's well done, and it will give us an opportunity again next year when we've under forecasted revenues, which we are. We can go back and reallocate some of those funding. So it's a pleasure to serve, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. And if I could answer any questions, be more than happy to get into any kind of weeds you'd like to get into relative to budget and things that are related to budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. You've done very well on time. We have time for a question that I have from here. I tell you what, I see a couple of people raising your hands. I'm glad to see that. Why don't we do that first? I had some prepared questions, but David Perry,
variety of ways. Just reading an article recently about the state of Iowa and how so many of the rivers in Iowa polluted agricultural runoff primarily, house, and streams aren't safe for swimming, they're safe for paddling, fishing, even drinking water. Just 10 days ago, when I was hearing at 2,500 participants in the iron. And all those participants brought families with them. They bought food, they stayed in hotels, they purchased gas. Tremendous boom to the local economy. Can you imagine what would have happened if Carbon's code were too dirty? That whole thing would have gone. And you could find examples of that probably in every locality across the Commonwealth of Virginia, because we have a clean environment, not by accident, but because we've committed to it as a Commonwealth. We can do things like this that other states simply can't do. So, thank you for you and Delta Head for again your continued support.
You're not looking for a particular response to that, David? All right. Thank you for doing it, David. Because of time, I probably should ask you to make it a brief question, then we'll decide how much time we have to give answers. Don? Is that directed to anyone in particular, Don, or whoever would like to take? You're talking about expanding the Catawba study beyond this area. Sam, could you address that briefly?
So fortunately, with the new administration, you got all new eyes on it. The new commissioner of behavioral health, the Department of Behavioral Health, is very interested in a new strategic plan for behavioral health in Virginia. All of it's very difficult. So the language in the budget reads that they will study all of behavioral health in all of Virginia in paragraph 1. And then in paragraph 2, it says that the money for studying goes to Catawba and outlines specifically what the Catawba project is going to be. So they're doing both at the same time. And fortunately, I've been appointed newly to the Behavioral Health Commission, which is a legislative commission. And now we're working with the executive branch to develop a new strategic plan. So I think that there's a big appetite to try to change some of the way we approach behavioral health. So the whole point of this first step is to bring especially some additional substance use disorder facilities and treatment, whether that be residential treatment or additional clinical capacity. We'll need to come up with that over the next 6 months.
Very briefly, but generally studies. We do a lot of studies. I'm a big believer in studies. It's amazing the ideas that come out of studies. And I can tell you a bunch of studies I'm on right now, but more generally, what comes out of it may not necessarily be what somebody thought was going to come out of it, but because you get the people together, you learn a lot from other people.
John Bradshaw, did you have a question?
I would like to hear a little bit more about old road repair and new road construction.
Old road repair and new repair construction. I want to give Joe a chance if he has something to say. John, I saw you stand up, but Joe, would you like to address it first?
So there's a couple things that happened. First off, the Commonwealth Transportation Fund is doing very, very, very well. I could look it up, but off the top of my head, it's up about 15-16% year over year, which is about the same as the year over year, the prior year before that. A part of that is because of a changing in the taxing structure that we did in the General Assembly in 2019. The other thing that's happened is part of that, when I talked about the surplus money from the prior year, about $250 million of that went to I-64. Well, that does near the Hampton Roads area. Well, that doesn't help us particularly, it does free up that project to allow more money to be spent that's currently allocated in budget through the Commonwealth Transportation Board across the state. So I think we're in a fairly robust position right now.
What about new roads?
Well, new roads are funded out of the Commonwealth Transportation Board as well. So it's a matter of prioritization, but as far as amount of dollars that are allocated, it's certainly much larger than it has been.
Yeah. In 2020, we had the best transportation package ever since Blyles in 1986. We equalized the gas tax at 28.8% per gallon at the wholesale level, by the way. So you don't really see it at the pump. It's the tankers down in Montvale. That's where they pay it. And the people who take the gas out of that, they go to other states too, North Carolina, who knows where. And it was my bill that equalized it between those on 81 and the interstates and those that are in the rural areas. So the rural roads have a need for transportation packages as well. In fact, some of the rural roads are the worst in Virginia. So we hope we can get that money up as well. I don't agree with the governor's idea of pausing this for several months. It'd be a disaster because most of the money we have for roads comes out of the transportation, out of the wholesale tax that we put on roads, as well as gasoline, rather, which is in addition to the federal government's money. But unless you can build the roads, what are we doing going to the 19th century again with horse and buggies? I can give you the whole history of transportation in Virginia. It goes way back. And the idea of a gas tax was Harry Byrd's idea, fiscal conservative Harry Byrd. And unless you have a transportation gas tax, you're not going to be able to build the roads and fix the roads we desperately need. So I hope we don't do whatever the governor wants to do about pausing. In fact, Congress has been looking at and Biden too has been looking at the Exxon Mobils of the world, and they're making a huge profit. And Congress asked the question, if we get rid of the federal 18 cents a gallon tax, would the gas price go down? They said, hey, no. It's supply and demand. It's all about supply and demand. And the oil companies control the supply. And so they could actually increase the amount of supply there is if they would do it. But we need the gas tax in order to make sure we can build the roads and maintain the roads. And so I hope we can continue doing that. So without the gas tax, we're not going to get it's going to take 10 years to fix 81 to begin with. And I had a lot to do with making sure 81 does not have tolls. Tolls are worse than taxes. And so I think most people prefer to have tolls, taxes rather than tolls. And you see what's going on between, I think, exit 140 or something like that and 150. We're doubling the size, adding additional lanes on both north and southbound on I-81. It's going to be 10 years before we get that done. Now, we should have started 20 years ago when I wanted to do it, and many of us wanted to do it back in 2004. But it didn't pass because the House wouldn't agree to do it. So I'm a big believer in making sure we have adequate funding for transportation, which is critical to our economy. We're not going to be the best state in the country to do business without roads and without maintaining the roads and fixing the roads, especially 81, which, by the way, is the worst interstate for delays without anticipation. Some places, it's going to be a delay, but in Virginia, in I-81, we don't even know there's going to be a delay when all of a sudden there's a delay. When's the last time you saw a delay on 81? Just turn on the television.
Thank you all, gentlemen. Looking at the clock on the wall, it's time to line things up. A round of applause for all of our speakers. These gentlemen have been good to stay a few minutes after and talk to you individually. And again, Ken Briggs, thank you for putting this together. The representatives of the respective delegations, it's nice to have them with us as well. Appreciate your participation. President Clark.
Thank you, John. And again, thank you, Ken Briggs, for setting this up today. Thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it. Next week, excuse me, we're going to have leadership of the Roanoke Valley, Eric Saul, I believe, and he's going to be introduced by Kevin Reeder. And I hope everybody can go and get in the pool this afternoon. And on that, we are adjourned. Thank you.